Well, good morning. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for those links. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. As a matter of fact, probably this whole past week, and unfortunately, God, probably like half this week, I'm gonna be almost tied up to where I can't do anything. Well, I can do a little bit of stuff, to be honest, but like I can't. I'm not gonna be able to do as much coding and stuff as I did. But Yeah, in a second I'll show you. I'll show you what I was talking about with like parsing files. I'll show you the approach I made, and you're welcome. I know it's not the most efficient. It's not. It's definitely not the fastest compared to hard coded, just a raw, very optimized routine. But the reason I chose kind of like the way I kind of selected it is I wanted something that didn't require a programmer's intervention. It didn't require me or another programmer to write code. I think and that kind of empowers, I think, a person using something. And again, they don't need this front end. What I actually designed is built into a library that can be used in other programs. So it's not necessarily just for this one. And I'll eventually get to where I can have the source of how using different functions and then the actual library source and all that stuff. It's just a lot of cleanup work. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of grief for probably whoever tries to use it. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like I think that's a good quality. I think a person that takes a lot of pride in things they write. I think that's a good quality in a person. And I know that again, I offshoot a lot, but I kind of feel the same way. I think back, back I think when I first started programming, it's kind of funny because when I was a teenager, I just wanted to lay in the sun, eat peaches, lay in the sun, and exercise is really what I did. And my parents were so trying to get me out of the house. A friend came over and brought code, source code. I think it was written in, it was either COBOL or RPG. And and it was on Greenbar. And he brought it over to the house, and I looked at it, and yeah, I enrolled. I thought, oh, this looks problem solving. This looks like a blast. And I enrolled, and me and my dad actually went and bought a computer. And I sat on the floor and taught myself basic, passed the test, got into a trade school. And yeah, so because I always thought that what you write is an expression of who you are. That's kind of like how I always looked at it. But I don't want to. I caught this term called waffling. I've never heard of it, but it's. I thought it was such a really cool statement. To just carry on without saying anything per se. But yeah, you don't want to do that. But let me show you what it was. But I did want to say thank you. But I didn't. I wanted to show you the way I kind of approached it because I know how you had mentioned the BA2s, and I did encounter that. I actually encountered the BA2 problem because when I went to, let's say, BA2s, when I went over to the archives, and let's see, when I went over here and I wanted to display files, let's say, that was going to be too big, but when I wanted to display, like with show files, and that show files is a generic function that looks at what you're asking it to show. If it's a folder, it'll show the files in the folder. If it's an archive, it'll show you the archive. I try to make it as transparent as I can. If it's a zip file, like if it's like a downloaded zip or something like that, and you configure the extensions for the quote quote zip file. So it can be a RAR, it can be a 7Z, a zip, and you basically just say, okay, if it's this file, I want you to do this, and then you define what program you want to handle that and the parameters to pass to it, and it does the rest. And that's how I kind of open archives and stuff. But let me show you what this is. Well, what this does, I'm trying to think of some quick ways to show you. An example would be, give me a second. Let me go to look at game saves, and then I'll show you the code. Let me see. They're located here. Okay, so these are like different game saves. Green is my current game. So if I double click on this, it basically does a show, and it says, okay, it's a game save. So I wanna show it a certain way. And what you can see, and this is the same for ESPs, it's the exact same thing for a plugin. So, there's text files. The way that I was looking at it, I only had two classes. There's either an all text file, or there's a file that I'm going to call binary, which has non-text data in it. And unfortunately, with certain languages, the keyboard mapping is different and the character formation is much different. So it looks like it's outside of an ASCII range, but the normal ASCII set of characters for what would be considered text. So non-text would be outside of, let's say, a space, or if I don't remember the actual tables, but what would, like whatever the last displayable character would be, such as like whether it's a space, I think it's a space, and now what the ending is, I think there's special characters like quotations or something. Once you get past the end of that, then you're in, like anything over like what they would consider to be an escape key, like a 127 or something, it would be, what would be considered non-displayable. So, just regular text or binary. So what I do is I treat a BA2, which it is, as a binary file, or an ESP
Let's get to modding.
as a binary file. So it's the same function for both files. In my program, it's the exact same thing. The only difference is the definition of the file. So the definition of the file is stored, let's see, I think I have it, give me a second, I think it's right in formats. So let's locate ghetto formats here. This is the definition file. So I have code over here. Now, what's funny is the actual name, it eludes me. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to open archive. And this is a function. Now, it doesn't parse the whole file. And that's because for two reasons. One, the format file doesn't have the complete definition. It will only parse what you tell it the format is. So if the format is wrong, it's going to parse it wrong. Or if the format is incomplete, it will parse it incomplete. The only difference I had to deal with was the difference in the tables, because the tables in a BA2 was definitely different than the BSA table. It was still located towards the end of the file, but the actual table lists that point to all that is different. But what I'm looking for is where it actually, because I forget the actual function. There's a function. Is it? I can take a. Let me just try a stab in the dark here. It's not binary reader. God, I can't even remember what it is. Well, okay, so I don't want to type the video with a lot of this stuff, but the actual library that opens and closes binary files. Yeah, you could probably use text files too, but it's really just, it's a binary file thing. It needs to know the format, the actual format of the binary file. So the format is stored in an external file. It's read, compiled in a sense to try to make it nearly as fast. I mean, there's some optimizations I could do, but it's interpretive, but it's kind of a compiled form of interpretive. So it's not super fast, but it is pretty quick. At least on my system. Now on other systems, if they don't have really fast processors or things like that, it probably is not going to be as fast. But I have it's just a binary parser. I think that was what it is. Let's try parse data. There we go. Yeah, this is it. So it's basically, this is the routine here, and this is what it does. So going through all the code, it eventually gets to where it needs to know the file name, it needs to know the format. Once it knows the format, it can begin parsing the file. And that's what it does. And if I can get in here, if it's in this section, it might be in another section, you can actually see where I need to check in the format. Are you saying it's a long word? Are you saying it's a byte? Is it a zero string, a Z string? How are you defining it? and that's kind of like this. I think this is where it is. I think it is. Like I say, I don't want to tap a lot of time looking for stuff because I wrote this a while back, and yeah, here we go. See, this is where I say if you define it as a character, then it does a certain thing. If you define it as a byte, so each field. So this gives me the ability to define custom types of fields. Other than the standard, byte, long, word, things like that. And then what I do next is I define the format of the file here. It has repeatable structures. It has variables. So you can specify, like, let's say, for example, let's find one here. As an example, there is a, here we go, like in this example here. So in this example, where it's got plugins. So plugins is just really a group identifier. Plugin count is a variable that was loaded up here. So plugin count, where are you? Plugin counts. Plugins are here. So plugin count is a variable. So you can actually use variables that you parse as in an arithmetic expression, along with the type of structure it is you want to recur. So that's kind of like how it's designed. And the actual routines still need some work. They still need some debugging. They do work, but they need to be cleaned up, and I'm sure there's bugs in there that I need to fix. But this is how I designed it. So what happened was when let's see, let's go back over. This is what I need. Yeah, I think it's right here. So up in here, you can see where I got a BA2. And then I had, BTDX. What I wound up doing, because the file thing changed, at least what happened with me was, I didn't, see, if you notice, I don't really put anything more yet, because I took each data structure in its own format. So you literally can specify formats within formats. That's why you don't see the full BA2 definition. But what I had to do was, and it does use the version number, at least to a degree. And that's what I was looking for, because there actually is a version number somewhere. At least I thought it was in here. Yeah, I thought it was in here. God, it shows how much I know. Well, there was, wait, is this? Yeah, this should be it. Unless it's a different file. Unless it's actually in a formats folder. God, I hate looking for this stuff. Yeah, I just actually haven't been up that long. And, is it over here, maybe? Let's see. Maybe it's here. Yeah, here it is. So you can specify formats based on, like, I can say, like the format file says, okay, you've given me a file. You're not telling me what it is. So I'm going to look at the file extension, and then I'm going to see if there's a format for that extension. That's why it has like BA2 any and ESP any. That's where you see the formats. And this is another parsing thing. I just grabbed the wrong the folder. But there was a number, if I remember right, they changed the version number. And the version number was actually going to be part of the actual thing. You can see where I haven't cleaned this up. I still have the save game stuff in here. But there was, I think it was this right here. I think the new version was 8. So you can see where, let's see if there's a version, see version 1. So the reason I had a problem with it is because when I went to use this to parse the data, because really I'm at this point, at this particular point, I'm just trying to get the resource file names out of the BA2. Because that's all. That's really what because I didn't have time to really. I didn't have enough time to invest in each particular part. I had to time slice as I went to get everything thrown in that I was wanting to throw in. Because it wasn't just the interface; it was all the functions that are in the libraries that feed the interface that can be used for other things. That was kind of like my goal. So all I had to do when I looked at the BA2, I noticed it was different. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not getting no file names at all. They're not even corrupted file names. It's not like I'm even reading into the binary data. It's like I got nothing, and I'm like, okay, it's like there was no format. So when I went in and cleaned up some of the functions, I put little edits in there that says, okay, if you can't find a format, say you can't find a format, and I noticed that. Like, wait a minute, it couldn't find a format? The file's right here. So that's what prompted me to go in and look and say, wait a minute, what do you mean it couldn't find a format? It's right here. And then I thought, okay, what are the conditions for the format? Well, one of it is it needs a version number. And I thought, oh, I can see the version number is different. And all I had to do, if you notice, I just copied it down. So now the format has changed. I just haven't parsed to that point yet. Because if you see up here, I'm only parsing the header. So once I parse the header, now, the other ones are different. The BSAs are different, because they have each file name is stored in a folder block. So you have to cycle through all these folder blocks in order to get the file name, and then you combine that in order to get the file, the actual relative file, which is usually relative to the data folder. But in this case, it looks like what they did is they just put a solid strip of names, just relative file names, which was much easier, much cleaner, and but it was much easier to deal with. But that's what I do. So see, once I get the file name offset, once I get this offset, then all I need to know is how do I parse the file name block. And that's what I have down here, because the way that it does this is the format begins. This is the whole format. So it ignores blank lines. It ignores comments. You can put whatever comments in there you want. It completely ignores it. But it does look at the actual XML identifier. And so you can have as many identifiers as you want. It lets you break it down. So header, so what it does when it creates this over here, when it creates this, it will actually put in front of it, it puts in front of the name that you don't see. I'm probably stripping it out here because it's really irrelevant. But if you want to, but this is what this is. This is the same thing. So the same parse data file. It's the same thing used to do this. It's the exact same thing to do this. And when you double click on it, it gives you the information that it parsed. There is another thing that that I actually can tell. Well, no, you can see up here. So all this information is parsed from the header, or as far as I need to parse it. I didn't go any farther than the screenshot because I just needed to get the screenshot up so I could see it. And but the code is still there. And yeah, that's all I had to do. So I did notice that. Thank you for mentioning that, and I do appreciate that. I do. I came across it, and I realized the version changed. Now, like I say, if you notice, this didn't change, but I'm pretty sure with version 8, they've changed other structures further in the file. I just haven't gotten that far. And I do usually take a look at, a lot of the online resources from the community where they've gone in and they've kind of reversed it, and kind of checked it out, and that really does help. But yeah, I wanted to show that, kind of share that, and this is, yeah, I did come across that, but I put this in here like this. So like for an example, as an example, I had one called DDS. There's one over here called I think the format was called DDS, which is here. And you can see that it's a DDS definition to a certain point. And technically, I wanted to get the width and height, the pixel width and pixel height. That's really what I wanted to get. I didn't really need to go any further than this. So by doing this, I can just simply call parse data file and literally just pass it the DDS file. And it'll look at it and say, well, you didn't give me a format. You just gave me a file name, so I'm going to assume you're looking for dds.ini as the definition format, and that's what that is. So this would give me the ability to parse any, the way I want it, something that would be any data file. So I would be able to parse. It's not as fast as hard coding all of this. But now I did have to do some really interesting tricks, like I say, with the older versions of the BSA files. That's a little bit different of a maneuver with code rather than just a straight out parse, a serialized parsing, if you will. It took a little bit more to do that. It can still be serialized, but it took a little bit more work because it was a little bit different. But this way, I can look at meshes. And not just me. I mean, you could parse meshes. And so, because what I wanted to get at, I know this is a long video. God, I haven't even had... I did have something to drink this morning. I was thinking coffee, but I'm actually trying to give that up. So, but it does give the ability to edit, not edit, not even condition check, to validate or look for problems in the data structures in data files. So if something is missing, it can actually parse it out enough to say, yep, this is what, like an example of DDS files where instead of it being divisible by 2, the width and height, evenly divisible, modded by 2, mod 2, then instead of that happening, then it'll crash. It'll literally crash the game. Like the engine just literally just pukes. Because who would do that, right? And that's why I just don't think Bethesda even bothered to think of that. Well, let's make sure it's right. I might get that, but, at least edit the thing out. So then I think you had somebody that came in that actually put it, had to patch the code to try and catch those problems so it wouldn't crash. And I think it was... shower curtains. There was some kind of like curtain mod or something that puts like, toiletries, like it's a mod. I think it was CWSS. I can't remember. I think it was CWSS was the mod. Had one file in there that was not equally divisible by 2 width or height. One of those dimensions had like 1 extra. It was an odd number, and therefore it crashed when you used it, and or whatever it did to calculate, it crashed the actual game. And somebody had went in and just tried to fix that one file. So this kind of gives that ability to write quick code by saying all I need is the format. And also, and God, I know this is long, but also everything is self-documenting. So by looking at the format, it self-documents. You can see, like I can look at this DDS file and I can literally see, because I could put comments in here more than what I have, that literally self-documents what I'm looking at. And then therefore that function, that actual parse data file function, which is in the utilities library, it's just a dependent library. It's just a library. So DLL is what it is. So that that gives the ability to put that in any application, a quick and dirty, by saying, oh yeah, I've got this. I want to check DDS files. I just need to go, like I say, to the width and height. I've got that. I don't need to parse, because it won't parse it any further. And then once you parse it, it actually creates a table. And I did the exact same thing for ESPs. I don't know. I'll take a look and see. I don't know if this will work, but yeah, I'll give it one more shot because I don't think I have it in there. I honestly don't. Yeah. But you can parse. It's not like I don't know if show files, but it's not like it's the same thing. I honestly do the exact same thing. Let's try more information. Here it is. Okay. So yeah, here's more information. So this is an example of, you can see block. Well, this is blocks. These are archives. But you can actually see, these like size, ID, file. Now, file stream is what I add. You have to ignore that. And there's the format file I used. But you can see the size, flags, forms. These names are actually defined in that external format. So it's kind of the same for any, like any data file. Game save file, that was me when I double clicked on it. That was the game save. And I might be able to do the same to archives. I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't know. Let's try more information. If it even gives me that option. Yeah. See, these are the names you can see that was in the format file. And I think you might be able to do the same for archives. And then I don't really want to make this video like super long. It's just me droning. All right, let's see. Here we go. Yeah, see? So I did do it. So you can see what I'm grabbing. Now, with ESPs, it was a little bit different because they have the IFF chunk. I actually load, there's a flag I can set that because I really only want to load the header, but there's a flag that will load every chunk. And then every chunk can have its own definition based on the version of the based on the version of the plugin. So that's kind of like how that worked, and that was my approach to it. And that way, it gives it a little, it gives it extensibility. So it's not so much the interface, but the libraries are what provide the extensibility. All right. Well, I don't want to drone this on too long, but I did want to share, and I hope you guys are having a great morning. I imagine there's a lot of keyboard tapping and hitting the vending machines to to keep the day moving. All right, it's a beautiful day, so I hope everybody has a great day and afternoon.